2-year apprenticeship, and then you have an additional 4 years of training yourself, self-training, meaning you go on small ships, and every 6 months you get an upgrade until you get to where you're unlimited and you can pilot any size ship.
So in March '73, you were still learning from...
Well, I was a junior pilot. I was a pilot, but a very small license. Couldn't go on a ship like that. I was not the pilot, even though I did the work. I was a senior pilot watching, and that's how we trained.
What do you remember about the Anita?
Well, I remember specifically more the end of it, because it was just kind of a normal job. Got on board the vessel in Newport News, and it's about a 2-hour transit. But at that point, the authorities, the Marine people, were sending out warnings that the storm was imminent, and it would be best to stay in port. Some did and some didn't. So going out, it's about a 2-hour transit. We go out, you know, humans can feel danger. So it's not really customary to have people on the bridge other than the captain, the mate, the helmsman, look out if weather is bad. And maybe somebody else that may just come up, and generally they just stay a minute and leave. That's customary. But this day, there were more than that. I don't say it was the whole ship crew, but there was more than that. And you could see the expressions on their face, like, oh boy. Because you could see the weather. You know how it is when weather is coming and everything is different. Everybody's seen, you know, dark clouds and the wind kind of blowing certain ways, but this was different. And so I did my job. We got to the point, had conversations with the captain, wished him well, wasn't the least bit concerned about danger. Now, I don't have ocean experience. I'm only inland. So what's rough to me is nothing to compare what's rough out in the ocean. So finished my job, got off the vessel, and went back to the pilot station.
What's the next you hear about this?
I don't think I heard about it for at least a couple days, and then it became real, because whoever was looking, or it really goes into the system of the Coast Guard, into the system that sort of tries to help in these situations. So this was not blaring in our face, in a sense, you know. But then it became obvious that 2 ships had left, and he had not heard anything from them. I think there was some communication with the Norse variant, maybe an SOS or an Amber Alert or something like that. But still, at that point, it wasn't considered extreme. So it may have been like 3 days, but anyway.
Yeah, it was the day after when Norse variant did send an SOS, so they had radio communications.
So it was the next day, 24 hours later?
Yeah, a bit more. About lunchtime the day after, Norse variant made contact and had an SOS.
To who? The U.S. Coast Guard? Or
the Coastal Radio, Portland.
Portland.
Portland Coast Radio Station, and the Coast Guard was alerted.
Okay.
And with the Anita, nobody heard anything.
I remember.
Ever again, actually.
I remember that. Yes.
So North variant. There was one survivor who could tell a bit about the development, that the heavy weather go even worse the day after, and kind of real worse, and they went down.
Do you know what position on board the ship the one survivor? Where did he work on board?
He was on free leave. He was not on work in the machine, but he was at this.
Was he in the engine department?
No,
the steward department?
He was in
deck department.
He was engine man, but he was not.
They used to call them wipers back then. Would he be?
Yeah.
He could be considered kind of not a licensed man, but worked in the engine room.
Yeah, no, well, he was in between. He was like a mate, I guess.
Well, that would be part of the bridge staff, a mate. So,
yeah, but on level with a mate. He was.
Oh well, if in level with a mate's pretty high. I'm trying to think because you got your chief engineer, and then you have another engineer, and then you have different levels of people that kind of keep the area clean. So it doesn't sound like he was a licensed person.
He was not the chief. He was not the first engineer or second, but then he was experienced.
My real question is he probably doesn't really have good accurate ability to remember because he's not ever looking outside. He's down in the engine room.
Yeah, but he was not at work when it happened. He was
not at work.
He was on free watch. So
he was off. Okay, I can understand.
Yeah.
Free watch.
So he was in his cabin, and when the alarm went off, and they talked about what was the trouble with the ship in the mess room. So he had some
knowledge,
and also the radio conversation revealed some information.
Okay.
They had trouble with the hatches, and
I was wondering about that. So a hatch probably somehow worked free, accepted water.
Yeah, they
very quickly it goes down. Very quickly.
They took in water in the first and second room and turned around to go back, and then they were broken down by waves. As he tells.
That's more detail than I knew. Okay.
Yeah, he had quite a lot of information, but he's the only source on most of it.
So he's the only one that could really tell you how bad the weather was. I'm just guessing 20 feet or more seas.
Yeah, I have talked to seamen, 3 sailors on a third boat that survived, but assisted in the helping. So it was kind of the worst weather they ever experienced in the Atlantic.
Those particular seamen on the ships that you talked to, the crew. Okay.
Yeah, the third ship.
Because it wasn't a hurricane; it was a northeaster, they call it, which can be as bad as a hurricane. And that's the reason I think the maritime authorities weren't so, now today's standard they just tell you can't leave, because they had that authority to do that.
But it came from south, I think, Cape Hatteras. They said
Cape Hatteras, yeah, that's about 100 miles south. That's a direction that usually they come northeast, but the real bad storms, but they can be bad that direction. They can come from any direction, really.
What can you say about this area and how bad the weather can turn?
Well, I can strictly speak as someone inland that sees bad weather where I am. It can get pretty bad. I mean, I've been on ships that I've felt uncomfortable because I'm not used to ships yawing and pitching and things like that.
But how would you describe the Anita? Do you remember?
Yeah, at the time that was a fairly large ship, and it represented my license status. Like I said, I had been licensed in August. So I'm in my first license. There's 5 licenses. The first license is very small. I mean, very small. And the training program covers that training by, well, if you don't have a small ship to go on, we'll put you on other ships. So you're going every day as a trainee. And so I could have been on 2 or 3 ships that day. And so I was looking back to see if I could find any form of documentation, but they didn't really keep that sort of record keeping. I was just a riding junior pilot at that time. There was a pilot assigned, and I was assigned to ride with him.
Yeah, and Frank B. Long was interviewed by the commission, inquiry commission, and he states that he waited at Cape Henry until 3 o'clock in the afternoon for incoming ship called the Tugela, and then the weather was starting to get it was more wind, 50 knots he estimates. But so it got worse in the afternoon. He tells, and then it got even worse, until it was terrible. The day
Terrible
after.
storm, yes.
Yeah. But tell me a bit more about how the atmosphere amongst the crew members on the Anita.
Well, like I said, I only interacted with probably maybe less than 10. Mostly, and that was only the last 30 minutes. But like I said, it's usually the captain, the mate, the helmsman. The lookout, who is usually as far forward as low down, but when weather is bad, they bring him to the bridge. So, and then a couple others that just came up inquiring about what, just not talking, but just showing worry signs.
So you could sense that there was worry.
Yeah, I was worried from all of us. I was worried because here you're going out into a storm, and that can be that's just the worst. And back then, and probably so much today, but back then, the Norwegian seamen were known worldwide for being kind of the best, making the best decisions and could handle and do. And so they just continued on almost always. And I've often wondered, the other ships that left, did they leave because the 2 Norwegian ships left? And that's kind of a guide, but we'll never know that. But anyway, just wonder.
Did other ships stay at port?
From what I remember, yes. Yes.
So did they have maybe too much self-confidence? The
Well,
Norwegians?
that's hard to say. They were very well known as being the best seamanship people out there.
I guess they sailed on regardless of the weather forecast then.
Sure sounds like that. It looked like that to me.
Did you have problem getting off the ship?
It was rough, but no, that's what I do. Most in that ship, it's sort of, on today's standards, a very small ship. Back then, it was kind of a large ship. What I'm trying to say is the ship is very close to the water's edge because it's full of cargo. So it's literally 3 or 4 steps down. You jump on the launch, and you go ashore.
Do you remember any of the faces, or just?
No, I don't.
Did you see any other ships
No.
on your way out?
No, the actual visibility at that time was less, and I'm not saying it was that less, but I probably had a mile visibility. So the likelihood of seeing another ship was pretty small.
So the other ship, North Variant, left 45 minutes later, but from
Norfolk.
Norfolk.
Yeah, there's 2 coal terminals, one in Norfolk, one in Newport News. They generally sail these coal ships about the same time. That's part of the reason. Just the way they work.
Yeah. And then the third ship I mentioned was a chemical tanker that left Norfolk 1.5 hours later, 2 hours later than Anita. And it seems to me that all 3 ships went on a northeast route, quite straight out in the Atlantic.
It's almost straight, yes it is. East is straight, northeast is a little bit north, like toward New York.
And there's a lot of information that's not really accurate, and that's always with these things 50 years later. There are myths and misunderstandings, and
Always going to be with this much time.
but
That's why I contacted both. One son is Scott Jr. So I contacted him and said, "Do you remember anything about it?" And he didn't. And then Frank Long, he didn't have any children there or sons, and he died many years ago. So I couldn't make any contact there. So I did call a few of my other colleagues, and there wasn't too much. I kind of remember that type of thing, but didn't really.
But do you remember when the accident was known, what was talked about amongst you pilots about the search and the risk they took and such?
Don't remember anything dramatic. You know, it's more of, wow, that's quite an happening. You know? And ships do sink. They don't generally sink off our coast, but that's more south, where the weather is, what I understand, is much more severe under most circumstances. You always hear the Bermuda Triangle, that area, that wasn't close to that.
No. Is some told that you had the Gulf Stream and the Labrador, and that affects the conditions?
I never go out that far, but I have been out there. It's a warm area, and generally the weather is less, just because of the makeup, and I couldn't explain that, but I'm sure they went right through the Gulf Stream on their transit. It's like 50 miles off the coast.
The survivor of North Variant, he was on a raft for 68 hours, and he says that what saved him was the water, because he
It's warm. It was warm.
20 degrees or something Celsius.
Okay, that validates it then. They were in the Gulf Stream, because the temperature is just, you know, it's just swath of water that just sweeps down and continues. Yes.
Because if it was Labrador water, he wouldn't survive 3 hours. Right?
At most. Because that was February, right?
March.
March.
End of
March is very cold there.
Yeah. But was the story of the survivor, was that something you remember? Was that kind of a miracle?
Yeah, it was reported. You know, it wasn't a standout event. It was reported and followed. And then, you know, there wasn't any information. I can just surmise this seaman that he's in the water. Did he jump overboard, or did he get pulled overboard, or do you know, what did he say?
He was dragged down with the ship. They were trying to go in the boats or the rafts, and then it went down, and his life vest
got him up to the surface.
Got him up to the surface, and he, by luck, he managed to grab a raft that passed by, and able to tie his arm to the raft with a rope that was on the raft, and kind of survived that way. But it was the only one.
You would be able to answer this. Those types of raft, they're in a tube, and they have ropes around them, so if you're anywhere close, you can grab hold. So now you're connected to it, and then there's a tab, pull, and opens up into a raft. Did he ever do that? Did he get inside the raft?
It was the raft was open when he.
It was open. So he learned how to open it and got in the raft, where there's usually food and things, water.
Yeah, there was some supplies, and it was it's a capsizable raft. So if it flips around, it's similar on both sides.
It's just like a balloon.
Yeah, so you can enter the raft. It doesn't matter if it's upside down.
They usually have some form of communication on those rafts. Is that how he communicated where he was, or did the Coast Guard found him? Huh? Or somebody did.
They had portables, but he didn't bring. So nobody. He was
Himself.
He was by himself. There was some flares and such, and he tried to fire off, but he saw a search vessel the first night and heard a plane, and then he didn't have any sign of search for 48 hours, and then
wow.
so it was a mental challenge. He was a marked man, of course.
How did they find him, or who found him? Number one.
It was a Coast Guard helicopter.
Doing a patrol, looking.
Doing a patrol, looking when they were kind of giving up, I guess.
And then they saw him, and they lowered someone down,
Yeah.
grabbed him, brought him up to the helicopter.
Somebody jumped in the water and they contacted the tanker that picked him up. With
Oh, he was saved by another vessel.
Yeah, they put the boat out and
Okay.
got him up, and then he was flown to the USS Independence for medical care.
Okay, so the helicopter found him, and so another vessel was close enough. They got that vessel to where he was,
Yeah,
and then he was able to get on board the vessel, the other vessel.
Yeah.
Climbed up a ladder or something.
yeah,
And then once he was on board, so he must have been in pretty good shape. And then once he got on, a helicopter could come down
yeah.
and get him.
Two rescue members jumped from the helicopter and swam to the raft.
Okay, so they deployed
have-
two Coast Guard people
Divers.
in the water,
Yeah.
got him situated.
Yeah,
Wow, that's
yeah. He was kind of beaten up, but he was a very physically fit young man, 23 years old,
wow.
and very good swimmer.
Yes. So he and I would be about the same age.
Yeah.
Is he still around today?
No, he died early of cancer.
Oh.
So it was that's some years ago, 15 years ago or something.
Yeah.
But I have a very good interview with him from the archives. So he will be a kind of a main character in the story. And with the Anita, the story is that there was a hope for several weeks because they tried to. Everybody were looking for Anita and they were calling on radio and such. And by some misunderstanding or some vicious prank, there was a report of calls from the Anita, which gave hope for the families back home. But when they looked into that, it was no way that it could be accurate, and it's unexplained. It might be.
Was that days later or kind of?
Yeah, it was 3, 4 days, 5 days, 6 days later, and different incidents, and so I guess Evelyn can tell about that the hope of the families that went on for 10 days, 2 weeks. They were still hoping, and then it didn't show up on the other side of the Atlantic, and then they just had to conclude that it was missing. And they found a raft and some buoys close to the debris of the Norse variant. So they assumed that they were.
So they were close.
They assumed that, and there was also a report of oil film on the water, which could not have been the Norse variant. So probably Anita then.
It's all speculation at this point, you know.
Yeah, we can't conclude anything, but
So most likely the hatch, unusual that a hatch on both vessels would fail, and I can just imagine flying off. And at that point, you're talking minutes before it would sink.
both had stacks of what we call it, futons. They built the car decks with.
So they were the wood hatches? Is that what you're telling me? Individual wood, they weren't metal?
No, they were metal.
They were metal, yeah.
But they had stacks of steel, big steel plates that
On
they
deck.
used to stacked on deck, which they used to build the car decks when they, you know, they went with cars.
Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about. That increases the
Yeah,
increases that. Oh, okay.
and the survivor tells that he was told that the stacks were starting to move and sailing around on the deck and smashing things.
Oh my gosh. Okay, that
So-
makes more sense now.
Yeah, and
I mean, anything could happen when they start going overboard. It could have got in the propeller. Lots of things could happen.
a lot of things. Yeah, yeah. But in Norfolk and Newport News, there was no ceremonies or kind of a big events, memorial service or anything like that. You remember? It was
No, we have an authority called the State Corporation Commission. They review every shipping incident, ones that involve our port directly, and I don't remember much from that. It was sort of like we don't know a whole lot here, so it was looked at, it was researched as best they could, and then closed.
so there was no critique against captains or.
Well, I think that both pilots showed up at the commission. They summoned them to come in and tell them what they knew. And there's not a whole lot, even myself can say. It was somewhat a normal transit. Got there, got off. It was an expression of concern, more so than but at that time it was not that big of a storm. The storm was coming. It's almost like they were heading right into it. So it was sort of like farewell, good wind. Hope everything goes well.
Yeah, and I guess they've been through rough storms a lot of times.
Oh, all the time. This is not unusual. But something significant had to happen for this to happen. And now that you say they had cargo on the deck, especially steel, that could have broke loose. When it does, steel swaps all around. If boats are good, they become flying projectiles.
I know you already told this, but I'll just ask again anyway. But because the gut feeling you had, you told a bit about that. How would you describe the atmosphere?
Well, the bridge. People that came on the bridge, you could see and sense they were concerned, but they also was comfort because they knew they had a good captain and the reputation of the Norwegians were just so high up there. And I did my job and said my goodbyes and left. There were other ships, like you said, they were out there and they made it for some reason, but most ships sort of paused, maybe for a day, let the storm pass.
But you didn't have a bad feeling yourself?
Well, I always have a bad feeling when some ship is going into a storm. Today's technology, they can steer around those storms. And if they can't steer around them, they don't generally go. They wait for them to pass. And we're talking hours mostly, it's not days, it's hours that because the storms usually move along at a pretty good pace. So if the storm is here, Cape Hatteras, and you're here, and you're going to be there together, you just stay here until it kind of passes. But I'm not sure if that's what they encountered, because it sounded to me like they went north, and the storm was coming from the south. So I feel confident that the captain of the Anita felt that he could stay ahead of it.
Yeah, it could be. It could be. Did you? What would you? Could you tell something about how you regarded the standard and the maintenance of the ship, whether in good shape or?
Oh wow!
You remember anything?
I don't remember it being anything unusual. Let's put it that way. So
Yeah.
ships are generally maintained pretty well. So I would have noticed if there were deficiencies, both on the equipment on board, the bridge, and just a general sense of what it looks like. You can tell the ship when it's well maintained. So there's no rusting and all that. They take care of it.
Okay, now the sound check has started, so I'm glad we talked about most things. But is there anything you would add or?
No, but I would like to keep this dialogue going. You've said some things that kind of I like to go back in my memory and see if I can remember. So we keep it going with our email. Or are you the one talking to Ann, or is it your sister? You are. And she likes every time you email. She gets a nice feeling.
But
Evelyn.
as I said to Evelyn, I read through all the archives. It's not a very big job, but in 2 days you could read through the files at the old ship library, if you call it that. And there's a folder for each ship, and of course with the inquiries and such, there's some material, but it seems that they concluded that they should make some changes with the stacks of steel.
Absolutely. You don't see that anymore.
No, they started to put it on top of the cold instead of stacking it on the side. And there was also some talk about this construction that kind of got like a swimming pool at the front deck, so it didn't clear the water until the next wave came, so it would be constant deep with the front ship would lay heavy in the water anyway, just being pushed down by new seas, which is not good. And also this possibility that the steel plates loosened and damaged the hatches and whatnot, and more water came in, and they had to, yeah.
Was there any stability information with the ship's files, anything from the ship? Because they usually have it shoreside as well as on board the vessel, and that tells you a lot. Was the ship stable to sail? And you got to say yes.
Yeah,
the captain wouldn't sail if it wasn't.
No.
But that would give you more information about what you're talking about.
The investigation, of course, looked into that, if it was overloaded and everything, but it was all normal.
All the low lines were correct? It's just,
yeah, everything was okay, and they even, there was a possibility that there could have been an explosion in the cargo, but they don't know. But what the survivor tells is that the ship was tilted before it went down.
Unless some cargo got out of shape.
Or water or whatever. It was on the side a bit, but not. He could walk on deck, but it was noticeable.
That I've been on ships, getting on ships, where the water from one side, and this is not big waves now, but they're pretty big waves, are going from one side, washing to the other side, and I'm going up the ladder where water is pouring down on me. You understand that? So ships like that, they literally would be kind of underwater, at least the main deck.
Yeah.
They kind of go up, down, this type of thing.
There was also a theory that the length of the ship was very, with the waves at that time, or for that area, it was, if it was on top of two waves and no support under, that would be
that's
terrible.
That's impossible. Just ship broken half.
But they sailed back and forth 60 times with cargo. So
any weather during those 60 times?
Of course, a lot of storms.
Similar weather?
Of course, but maybe this was a more perfect storm than usual. Then it was even bigger waves. They both just got very unlucky. But I guess that a theory is that both, like you said, headed straight to the storm's eye in a way, and they were close by.
Sounds like it.
So a lot of factors played a role, but it's a mystery that the Anita did not make any radio contact. It had backup systems, and we don't know anything about why. It happened so sudden.
Could have been a total electrical failure, which I've been on bridges and that happens, and you have nothing. You have only your magnetic compass.
Yeah.
So the right lightning or the right this can literally dismantle all your electronics, everything.
But they write in the inquiry, there's a witness that states that the radio officer was troubled with seasickness. So if the weather was so bad that she was not able to do her job, that could also explain why they didn't send the signal. And
Yeah, maybe no one else knew how to use it but her.
no, that's also a safety thing they discuss. There should be more able bodies.
But they don't have radio operators anymore, you know.
No.
They don't have those anymore.
No.
It's all very monitored from land-based places.
Yeah. But I think, you know, it's all a lot of speculations. A lot of things happen. The only thing we know for sure is that Anita went missing.
That's correct.
And the extraordinary terrible weather is it's the explanation.
Yeah, and then we'll all have to live with that, unfortunately. We just don't know.
I mean, even today with modern technology, if the weather get worse and you're in the wrong place, you're in trouble.
You would be. You're not supposed to be in the wrong place with today's technology.
No.
Yeah,
No,
they pinpoint it so close. They know that the Silver Seas would never go into
No.
bad weather.
No.
They would stay right here, or they would, you know, they'd do something different.
They did a survey that there were 10 ships the previous 15 years that broke into in the Atlantic east of the States. So sometimes it had happened before. Not every year, but sometimes twice a year. But yeah.
Like I said, look up Marine Floridian or Marine something else. First name is a company, and one of their ships went down also. It wasn't during the storm; it was another, but it was in the same area.
Yeah, around the same time, or
Can't recall, but I don't think it was at the same time. But it did sink in the same area. Is all I remember.
yeah.
I'm pretty sure they found the crew, but that's very vague. So I would need to look that up and get the details.
Yeah. But would you assume that the raft would just follow the storm? Because he was taking. I think they had the exact point where the distress signal, the SOS, they reported where they were, and he was found. He had traveled 5 knots an hour to get to in 68 hours, so he was quite some distance away.
Was he holding on to the raft during that whole time?
Yeah, he was first on one raft, and then he was thrown off, and then he was lucky enough to catch another raft, and then he tied his arm to the raft, and then
Wow, that's phenomenal. So he was involved with 2 rafts. Both of them were opened so he could get inside?
yeah. And the first was smashed by a big wave and disappeared.
Deflated, and he got out of that.
He was thrown away.
Wow.
So I have a picture. It was kind of an open raft. There was kind of a tent, but you know that was just.
Sorry, I thought they were all tented, but this one wasn't.
But it was the tent canvas was wrecked in at once. So he was and he was able to find some crackers and some canned water, but he was more or less starved and dehydrated.
He was in there how many? 6 days? Yeah.
No, 68 hours.
68 hours. Okay.
And on the 3rd day, the storm was kind of calming a lot, and then they found him,
What a
and
lucky man.
kind of like a needle in a haystack.
Every bit of that.
But there was some that helped them narrow it down, because another ship, the Kavila, found one of the rafts at the position, and they kind of narrowed down the search area. So they went into that area, and then they found him.
Okay.
So he was Yeah, it was a lot of coincidence, but he was a fighter.
Yeah, 23. You have a lot of will.
Yeah, but he was. I'm not sure he was that. There was a lot of press interest in him, but of course, especially in Norway. But it was kind of a miracle story that gets the media attention a lot of places.
Yes, I can see that.
But he tried to go out as a sailor again, but it was hard for him. He got nerves and.
I bet it would.
Yeah.
Was.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Should we go out in the sunshine and
Sure.
get an ice cream or coffee or?
I just hope this added something for you.
Yeah.
Do you have a picture of Dad?
Yeah.
I'd like to see it. And I hope this fills in some blanks, you know. Like I said,
Yeah,
it
but
was
you know-
kind of a just another job.
Yeah, but you know, as we are speaking now, you're the last person that
May have seen him. I don't know if I did or not, you know, because
no, but you know, you're the last
Close.
person that alive that was on the Anita.
it's scary.
Yeah, because Frank Long is.
Both dead. Both pilots that were close there are dead. Long time ago.
I guess we can. That's a fact. Then you were the last person on the Anita alive. Yeah.
I think that's correct. Feel certain that's correct.
Yeah. I think among the families, some told that for years they hoped that by some miracle the ship went to a deserted island and
Wow, wouldn't that have been nice, huh? And just found their way and
Yeah.
washed ashore and like
Survived on
Gilligan's Island, right? Remember that show, Gilligan's Island?
Robin Caruso. Or,
Yeah.
But I guess, did you think that, Evelyn? Or-
Yeah.
Yeah, you thought that?
Sometimes I thought so.
Or hoped?
Hoped,
right?
yeah.
Like, every children imagines that there's a fairy tale world, right?
Yeah.
I hope my dad was sitting on a deserted island with a cold drink and
What a wonderful thought.
yeah.
Yeah. Keep that thought.
Yeah.
Okay, let's go out in the sunshine then.